Every neighbor sold out to the corporation. The old farmer refused and now owns their land. The first truck came in September of 1998. A white Ford F-350 with Nebraska plates and a magnetic sign fixed to the door. Landstar Agricultural Holdings. Headquarters listed as Omaha. Walter Cobb watched it slow at the end of his gravel lane, idle for a moment, then continue west toward the Frommer place. He was standing at the fence line along County Road 14 in Dawson County, Nebraska. The same fence line his father had strung in 1941. Walter had taken over the farm in 1963. 35 years on the same 340 acres. He was 68 years old. His hands showed it. The corn was still standing in September. It had been a dry summer, drier than the two before it, but the stalks had held. Walter had pulled yield samples from his north field the week before. Estimated 161 bushels per acre. Not his best year. Not his worst. He'd been keeping records in the same green ledger since 1971. Every field, every season, every number. 27 years of entries in the same handwriting, the early ones slightly larger and looser than the later ones. The farm ran 340 acres total. 220 in corn and soybeans on rotation, 80 in hay ground along the creek drainage, 40 enrolled in conservation reserve. The buildings sat at the center: house, machine shed, grain bins, the old cattle barn that had not held cattle since 1988. The place smelled in September of dry stalks and turned earth and the faint diesel linger of his own equipment. It had smelled that way since Walter was a boy standing in the same yard watching his father work. He watched the white truck disappear past the tree line that marked the boundary between his land and Dale Frommer's. Dale had 240 acres to the west. Good ground. Black loam topsoil running 14 inches deep in places. Dale had been farming it for 22 years. The offer letter from Landstar arrived 4 days later. Typed on company letterhead, signed by a man named Thomas Gilmore, Regional Land Acquisitions Manager. The letter offered $1,600 per acre for Walter's 340 acres. Total consideration, $544,000. Payment within 45 days of executed agreement. The offer was valid for 30 days. Walter read it twice, put it on the kitchen table, made coffee. He already knew Dale Frommer had signed. Dale's daughter had told his wife at the grain elevator in Cozad. Told her the number $1,800 per acre for the 240 acres. $432,000. Dale had been carrying an $180,000 operating loan since 2014. The math had not worked for a long time. Walter's situation was different. The operating loan was paid off in 1994. He owned the 340 acres free and clear. His house, the equipment shed, and a 1999 John Deere 8300 he'd paid cash for the previous spring. The letter from Landstar represented real money. He understood that. He left the letter on the kitchen table for 3 days. Then, he called Marcus Frey in Lexington. Marcus had handled the farm's title work in 1989. Walter told him about the letter. Marcus said the 30-day window was negotiable if Walter wanted to counter. Walter told him he was not interested in a counter. Marcus asked what he was interested in. Walter said keeping his farm. He put the letter in the kitchen drawer next to the phone and went back outside. The September light was coming in flat and gold from the west. The corn along the north field needed checking before rain. The Henniker brothers sold in November. Carl and James, their father, had split the original homestead between them 18 years prior. Carl held 95 acres to the north of Walter's property, James 85 acres to the south. They sold separately, 2 days apart, at $1,750 per acre each. Combined, they cleared just under $315,000. Carl was 61. James was 57. Both had been talking about stepping back for 3 years. Walter had bought fence posts from Carl in the spring of 1996, had borrowed James's grain auger twice. They were good neighbors. Neither of them said anything to Walter before the sale went through. He heard about it at the elevator in Cozad, same as he'd heard about Frommer. Lou Anderson's 160 acres went in December. Lou was 74. His son had moved to Colorado Springs in 2011. The acreage had been leased to a neighboring operation for 4 years. The Landstar offer gave him a number he could retire on. He took it. By the end of 1998, Walter's 340 acres sat at the center of a 680-acre Landstar acquisition. Frommer's ground to the west. The Henniker parcels to the north. Anderson's acreage to the east. On the county plat map, Walter's farm looked like a square cut from a larger piece. Thomas Gilmore drove out himself in February of 1999, same white F-350. He was in his late 30s, wore a canvas coat with the Landstar logo on the chest. He stood at Walter's front gate for 2 minutes before Walter came out. Gilmore revised the offer. $1,750 per acre. Then, $1,900. He mentioned the access road running along the south edge of Walter's east field. That road connected the former Frommer ground to County Road 14. Without it, Landstar would need to build half a mile of new gravel lane at significant cost. Gilmore said Walter's cooperation would be valued. Walter told him the road was not for sale. The farm was not for sale. He wished Gilmore a good afternoon. Gilmore left his business card on the fence post. The wind took it before Walter came back inside. 3 weeks later, a Landstar crew installed a locked steel gate at the south entry of the access road. The road ran partially across former Frommer ground and partially across former Anderson ground. Both parcels now belonged to Landstar. The gate blocked Walter's equipment from reaching his east 120 acres by the route he had used for 27 years. Marcus Frey filed an easement claim in Dawson County District Court on March 8, 1999. Attorney fee, $1,200. Filing cost, $340. Walter drove to Lexington himself to sign the documents. The court ruled in Walter's favor on April 19th. The access road had been in documented continuous use since 1972. Prescriptive easement. The ruling ran 14 pages. Walter read all of it. The gate came down within 48 hours. By June of 1999, Landstar had started full operation on the surrounding ground. A 12-row AGCO planter ran through the Frommer and Henniker fields in the mornings. A K-Sit 8230 combine was reserved for fall. 3 hired hands from a labor contractor in Kearney worked the equipment. Walter could hear the diesel before sunrise from his back porch. On June 22nd, a Landstar spray crew ran an application across the north edge of what had been the Henniker ground. Wind was running 13 miles per hour out of the north-northwest. The Dawson County Extension Service measured atrazine residue in Walter's north field at 0.18 pounds per acre 6 days later. That field was in soybeans. Atrazine damages soybeans. The damage was visible by the 25th. Walter photographed the field on June 24th. He called the county extension agent, Dennis Schreiber, that same afternoon. Schreiber came out on the 25th. Pulled soil samples. Pulled leaf tissue. The formal complaint reached the Nebraska Department of Agriculture on June 30th. The settlement came in October. Landstar's legal team in Omaha offered $8,700. Walter accepted. He deposited the check at First National Bank in Lexington and did not touch it. He replanted the north field's damaged sections with a winter cover crop that fall. Hairy vetch and winter rye, $14 per acre for seed. The treatment covered 120 acres. Total cost, $680. Walter had been running cover crops on a rotation since 1987. The neighbors thought it was a peculiar habit. The 2000 soil test showed organic matter in his north field at 4.8%. The county average that year was 3.1. The year 2000 came without another formal communication from Landstar. Walter drove past the Frommer place each week on his way to the Kozad grain elevator. He could see their fields from the road. Landstar was running continuous corn on all 4 purchased parcels. No rotation. Same crop, same field, 2nd year in a row. He noted it in his ledger. He could also see the soil starting to crust near the road edge in the Frommer field. A pale gray-white crust forming on the surface between the rows by midsummer. He had seen that before. Knew what caused it. Knew what came next. Landstar ran anhydrous ammonia applications in the spring, at rates Walter thought were heavy for that ground. He watched the applicator work from his fence line 3 mornings in April. The Frommer soil ran sandy along the west edge. Heavy nitrogen on sandy ground leaches fast. It does not build. The Dawson County Extension Office ran a soil health survey across 6 townships in the fall of 2001. Walter participated. Dennis Schreiber led the sampling. When the results came back, Walter's fields showed compaction at 200 psi in the top 12 inches of soil. The Landstar parcels surrounding him averaged 340 psi. Schreiber's written report noted that continuous corn on clay-heavy soils without rotation would reduce yield capacity within 3 to 5 seasons. The report cited soil structure degradation, cited root zone compression, used the word irreversible in 2 places. Walter filed the report in a manila folder next to his tax records. He drove to First National Bank in January of 2002. Sat down with the branch manager, Carol Hecht, who had handled his equipment loans since 1991. He told her he wanted to establish a line of credit. She asked for what purpose. Walter said he was not certain yet. Said he wanted to be ready. Carol pulled his financials. The farm carried no debt. Savings on deposit, $47,300, including the Landstar settlement. Annual net from the 340 acres running approximately $31,000 in a good year. She approved a line of credit for $180,000 at 6.2%. He thanked her, drove back to the farm. In February of 2002, Walter was at the Dawson County Courthouse in Lexington filing a property exemption on his Conservation Reserve Program acres. He had enrolled his south 40 acres in the CARP in 2001. The program paid $47 per acre per year, $1,880 annually for removing fragile ground from cultivation. While he was at the courthouse, he checked the delinquent property tax notices posted in the county clerk's hallway. He had done this every February since 1985. Standard practice. The notices were public record. Landstar Agricultural Holdings was on the list. The Frommer parcel, 2nd installment. Tax year 2001. Past due. Walter wrote the parcel number in the small notebook he kept in his shirt pocket. He checked the notices again in March. The delinquency remained. Again in April. Still there. He called Marcus Frey in May. Marcus confirmed what the notice suggested. A corporation carrying acquisition debt across multiple counties in 3 states had begun missing property tax payments in Nebraska. A colleague in Hall County had flagged similar notices near Grand Island. Marcus said it might mean nothing. Said it might mean something. He said the situation bore watching. Walter asked him to keep watching. Commodity prices in 2002 were not favorable. Corn traded below $2 per bushel for most of the fall harvest season. Soybeans held better, but not by much. Operations with low overhead and no debt weathered it. Operations carrying acquisition loans, hired labor, and equipment leases did not weather it as well. Walter's 340 acres cleared $22,400 net in 2002. Below his average, he did not touch the line of credit. He watched the Landstar harvest that fall from his fence line on County Road 14. The Case IH combine ran through the Frommer field in the first week of October. The grain cart ran behind it. Walter had seen that field yield 175 bushels in a wet year under Dale Frommer's management. The Landstar yield monitor on the combine. He could not see it, but he could read a crop. The ears were small, the stalks were thin. He estimated 130 bushels per acre, maybe 135. He wrote that number in his ledger and put a question mark beside it. The County Extension Office published its annual county-wide yield summary in December. Dawson County average corn, 151 bushels per acre. The summary noted that several large operation parcels in the central part of the county had pulled the average down. Walter filed that report next to the 2001 Soil Health Survey. On January 14, 2003, Landstar Agricultural Holdings filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in the United States Bankruptcy Court, District of Nebraska. The filing listed 14 parcels across 4 Nebraska counties. 4 of those parcels were in Dawson County. The Frommer ground. The Henniker East parcel. The Henniker West parcel. The Anderson acreage. Total acreage in the filing in Dawson County, 680 acres. Walter drove to Lexington and read the filing at the courthouse, all 47 pages of it. Marcus outlined what came next. A trustee would be appointed. The trustee would attempt to reorganize. If reorganization was not viable, the parcels would go to public auction. Timeline: 6 to 10 months. Walter asked what distressed farmland was bringing in Dawson County at auction. Marcus said he didn't know precisely. Said distressed agricultural ground in Nebraska in 2003 was moving at 40 to 60% of recent peak prices depending on condition. The Landstar parcels had been in continuous corn for 4 consecutive seasons. Soil condition was not strong. He estimated $800 to $950 per acre. Frommer had sold at $1,800. The Hennikers at $1,750. Anderson at $1,700. Walter sat with that for a moment. Then he told Marcus he would need him at the auction when the date was set. The auction was scheduled for June 9, 2003, Dawson County Courthouse steps, Lexington, Nebraska. The 4 parcels would be sold separately in sequence. The trustee's office had divided them by original ownership for clean title purposes. Walter arrived at 8:30 in the morning. He wore the same canvas work coat he had worn to every county meeting for the past decade. He carried a certified bank draft for $130,000 in his chest pocket. The line of credit had been drawn to $130,000 the week before. Carol Hecht had authorized an additional $80,000 if needed. Between the bank draft, the available credit remainder, and $49,100 in savings, Walter had access to $259,100. He had run the numbers 3 times in the week before the auction. Dale Frommer was there, standing at the edge of the crowd near the south wall of the courthouse. He was 71 now, lived in an apartment in Cozad. He had seen the auction listing in the Dawson County Advertiser. The Frommer parcel went first, 240 acres. The trustee opened at $172,000. 3 bidders raised hands in the first 4 rounds. At $192,000, 2 of them dropped out. At $205,000, Walter was the only hand still raised. Sale confirmed at $205,000, $854 per acre. Dale Frommer had sold it at $1,800. Walter signed the transfer documents at the folding table the county clerk had set up on the courthouse steps. Took 4 minutes. The Henniker East parcel came next. 95 acres. Carl Henniker's land. Opened at $68,000. 1 other bidder pushed it to $79,000. Walter went to $82,000. The other bidder looked at him, looked at the trustee, and stepped back. Sale confirmed at $82,000. $863 per acre. The Henniker West parcel, 85 acres. James's land. Two bidders pushed it past $91,000 before Walter dropped out. The numbers were close to his limit. A farmer from Custer County took it at $94,000. The Anderson parcel, 160 acres. No single bidder committed to the full acreage. The trustee permitted a split arrangement. Walter took 80 of the 160 acres at $69,862 per acre. Lou Anderson had sold the full parcel at $1,700 per acre. The auction concluded at 11:40 in the morning. Walter Cobb drove home from Lexington that day owning 755 acres of Dawson County farmland. He had arrived with 340. He was leaving with 755. He had spent $356,000 to purchase land that had sold 5 years earlier for just under $735,000. He had bought it at auction for 48 cents on the dollar. The access road along the south edge of his east field now ran entirely through his own ground on both sides. He pulled the post on the old Landstar gate that afternoon with his loader bucket. The post came out of the frozen ground with a sound like a rifle shot. He set the gate and the post in the bed of his truck and drove them to the farm dump pile behind the machine shed. It took less than 20 minutes. Dale Frommer had stood near the courthouse wall through all 4 sales. He did not move toward Walter. Walter walked past him on his way to his truck after signing the final documents. Frommer looked down at the courthouse steps. Walter gave him one nod and kept walking. Thomas Gilmore was not there. He had transferred to Landstar's Missouri operation in 2001 and left the company entirely in the spring of 2003. That first week of June, Walter drove the 4 parcels in his pickup before any fieldwork began. Drove every road edge, every fence line, every low corner where water might sit. He had not been on the Frommer ground since 1997, had not been on the Henniker parcels since Carl had invited him over to look at a drainage tile problem in 1995. He took 19 pages of notes, wrote down what he saw and what it would need. 3 pages on the Frommer northeast corner alone. The Frommer ground needed attention. Tax delinquency over 2 years had slowed basic maintenance. 3 field tiles in the northeast corner were cracked, causing standing water over roughly 12 acres. Walter had them repaired in August at a cost of $4,200. That same fall, he ran a lime application across the most acidic sections of all 4 new parcels. 2 tons per acre on the treated areas. Total cost, $8,400. He planted winter rye on the Frommer field in October of 2003. Same cover crop he had been running on his own north field since 1987. Cover crop seed came to $14 per acre. 240 acres, $3,360. He told his son Raymond, who drove out from Kearney to help that fall, that the ground would need 2 seasons of careful management before it performed the way it should. Raymond asked how he knew that. Walter pointed at the soil test results from the week before. He did not say anything else. The yield on the reclaimed Frommer ground in 2005 came in at 154 bushels per acre, below Walter's original fields. In 2007, it ran 162. In 2010, 171. The soil organic matter had climbed from 2.9% at purchase to 4.1% in 7 years. Dennis Schreiber came out in the fall of 2010. He had led the soil health survey across Dawson County in 2001. He stood in the middle of the former Frommer field with a clipboard and his old sample numbers in one hand and the new numbers in the other. He compared them for a long time. He looked at Walter's original 340 acres. He looked at what had been Landstar's surrounding parcels. He did not say anything about the 2001 Landstar readings. Did not need to. Walter drove Schreiber back to the road in the pickup. Schreiber asked if Walter planned to expand further. Asked if he was looking at any other parcels. Walter said no. Schreiber looked out the window at the fields going by. Said the ground looked right. Said whatever Walter had been doing was working. Walter said he hadn't done anything different, said he'd just been farming the same way he'd always farmed. Schreiber didn't say anything to that. The truck came out to County Road 14, and Schreiber got out at his own vehicle, thanked Walter, and drove back toward Lexington. Walter watched him go. Then he drove back up his own lane to check the east field before dark. Walter Cobb farmed all 755 acres in Dawson County until 2017. He was 87. Raymond had taken over the daily operation by then, but Walter drove the rows every planting season and every harvest, sitting in the cab of the John Deere with his green ledger on the seat beside him. He noted his yield samples the same way he had since 1971. He sold the farm to Raymond in 2018, not at market price, at 1998 appraised value. It had been Walter's idea. It took Marcus Frey 6 weeks to structure it correctly. Marcus was 74 by then, and still practicing out of his office on Washington Street in Lexington. He said it was the most straightforward, complicated transaction he had handled in 40 years. Walter was not entirely sure what that meant. He signed where Marcus pointed. Raymond still farms all 755 acres. Still runs cover crops on the same rotation his father started in 1987. Still sends soil samples out every 3rd year and files the results in manila folders next to the tax records. The access road along the south edge of the east field is freshly graveled. Walter had it re-graveled in 2014. Both sides of it have been his ground since the morning of June 9th, 2003. It runs straight and open in both directions, the same as it should have always been. The gate Landstar installed is gone. Has been since a Tuesday afternoon in late June of 2003. Nothing there now but open ground on both sides. Same fence posts Walter's father put in. Same land his family has farmed for 82 years. The truck that started all of it never came back. The ground it was headed toward belongs to the man it drove past. Still does.